All right. First, I'd like to welcome everybody out there in the audience. Always nice to see some people out there. And with that, I would like to call the May 18th, 2023 regular meeting of the Marysville Board of Education to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Mr. Keck?
Here.
Ms. Savage?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Vine?
Here. And now if you all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would now accept a motion to approve our agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. Any comments, questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carries. And now we're going to be recognizing the retirees from this year, and I'm so glad to see a lot of them out there. So we're going to come on down here, and as we call your name, come on up, and we would like to get a picture with all of you and give you a little token of appreciation. So. Okay. Well, this is kind of a tough thing to do, just because I know a lot of you out there, and I know what an impact you've had on all of our students and our families and our community over the years. We appreciate you so much, and so I'm going to be just reading the names of all of our retirees. I know not all of them could make it this evening, but again, please come down after I read your name. We'll start off alphabetically. Deborah Beanie. She was a health consultant at Bunsold Middle School for 23 years. Doris Brown, a cook, cashier in various buildings, and she retired November 11th of 2022 after 20 years of service. Becky Bouchon, she's a food service administrative assistant, 22 years. Thank you. We have Dina Carroll, an office aide at Northwood Elementary, 30 years of service. Have Karen Collins, interpreter, 23 years. Bill Cooper, maintenance technician, 26 years of service. Connie Froelich, library aide at MHS. She retired February 28th after 29 years of service. Meg Hall, language arts teacher for 20 years. Paul Henning, maintenance technician, 13 years of service. Lori Kuntz, special education aide at Bunsold Middle School for 25 years. Carol Lentz, elementary teacher, instructional coach, and Raymond principal, 34 years of service. Don't start crying, Carol. Jeff Marshall, phys ed teacher, 37 years. Wow. Linda Prohl, high school guidance counselor, 23 years of service. I know. Tammy Ryan, high school special education aide, 26 years of service. Teresa Schuler, high school special education aide, 23 years of service. Vera Spencer, high school secretary, 8 years with Marysville. Nice t-shirt. And Jennifer Watts, high school English teacher, 34 years of service. Now, yeah, yes, yep. We're going to get a picture if you can all squeeze in the middle here.
I would be remiss if I didn't say there are collectively a lot of years walking out the door, which equates to lots of runny noses wiped and lots of mouths that have been fed and lots of hearts that have been touched by the people that are here tonight. So thank you for everything you've done for Marysville and for our kids and our community. Thank you.
All right, we're going to stay down here for the next item on our agenda is our Employee of the Month. So I would accept a motion to approve Aaron Hall as our Employee of the Month. Motion by Mr. Keck. Second by Mr. Smith. I'll turn it over to Diane.
Become mobile.
Yeah.
Come on down, Aaron. All these months you've watched other people, right? Now you get to stand on this side of the camera, my IT guy says, so that you can be appropriately filmed, right? All right, so it's my pleasure tonight to honor you as the Employee of the Month and read the comments that your peers have written about you on why you're deserving of this award. For nothing less, you meet all our needs at board meetings. Like, I feel like sometimes we're high need in a short amount of time. Amazing work always, with a smile. So other comments I think would sum it up really, really well. It says, I would like our district to showcase Aaron Hall from the tech department. The addition of Aaron Hall to our department has been amazing. He has the skill and expertise that always exceeds expectations. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We're really happy to have you on board. There you go.
Can I have a roll call, please, Todd? Oh, you could do it here. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Mr. Smith? Yes. Ms. Savage? Yes. Mr. Ferguson? Yes. Ms. Devine?
Yes. Motion carries. It's official. All right, we're now up to public participation, and for those of you who may not be aware of our policy, we'll ask you to come up and state your name and address, and then you will have 3 minutes to share your comments. And just so you know, it's not meant to be a back and forth, but we do want to hear your comments, and we always take them into consideration. And we also, if we need to set up any kind of a meeting afterwards, we will do that as well. So I will start right now. It looks like we have Scott Stackhouse as our first public participant.
Thank you. Is this live? Yes, we're good. Excellent. My name is Scott Stackhouse. I live at 530 Millwood Boulevard. Good evening, members of the board. I would like to start and end this with two of my favorite quotes that remind me of Tri-Academy. First, all kids need a little help, a little hope, and someone who believes in them. In 2017, our school district announced it would open an alternative high school focusing on students who are struggling to earn credits towards graduation and who might need more individualized attention. Marysville Schools charged Ashley Thompson with the task to create a space for kids to find themselves and become successful in the classroom. She spent countless hours studying what is needed to create that perfect school setting for the most at-risk kids. What Mrs. Thompson did was more than create the perfect school. She created a family. This is when Tri-Academy opened its doors, and they welcomed any student who needed that extra something. Kids come to our school hungry, tired, unmotivated, discouraged, and angry. Most students enter our door with significant trauma. They struggle with mental illness, addiction, poor self-esteem, and they believe what they have been told. They will never graduate. But our school district created a school for them to feel respected, safe, cared for, and they want to better themselves. Our staff has worked extremely hard to create an environment where our kids can learn resilience, hope, and empathy. It is truly beautiful to watch our kids grow and gain confidence. I believe Tri is the best credit recovery program in Central Ohio. Dublin, Upper Arlington, Hilliard, Hamilton Township, they have all visited with the plans of recreating what we have built. Families call from out of district wanting to enroll their kids here because they have heard how successful this program is. Since Tri-Academy has opened, we have had 231 students graduate from high school. That's approximately 10% of each graduating class. It breaks my heart to know we will not be able to support our kids next year. My message tonight is to never forget Tri-Academy. Our kids, our families, and our community deserve this. To wrap this up, I want to share another quote. Be kind, because everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. We have so many kids that need Tri-Academy. You may never know what they are going through, but they are fighting. I hope in the future years that you have the opportunity to celebrate with our family after ringing the bell one last time as they graduate from Marysville schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. Next, we have Kathy Foster.
My name's Kathy Foster. I live at 1860 Deer Crossing Drive. And I promise Scott and I did not write these together. Have you ever had a task that feels so impossible and daunting that you cannot complete it? Have you just given up because it's so overwhelming you don't even know where to start? Now put yourself in a 14-year-old's shoes. You have ADHD, there's a pandemic, you have a single mom who is a nurse and is working 10 hours a day. You start your freshman high school career with no in-class school, your second year is partial school, and by the time you are at the end of your sophomore year, you have 0 credits and you are told to move to another district by both your principal and your guidance counselor because you have no hope of graduating. Suddenly, you are given the opportunity to interview at Tri-Academy and the world opens up to you like a rose. Scott Stackhouse and the staff of Tri-Academy have been the fertilizer my son needed in this scenario. He started his junior year with 0 credits and less than a 1.0 GPA. He was depressed, he was overwhelmed, and he had been seeing a counselor at the Mosaic Project for suicidal ideation. He is finishing his junior year, as of today, with 14.25 credits, 3 state seals, and a 3.4 GPA. And more importantly, he has confidence and a knowledge that he is as intelligent as he has been told for years, and mostly a sense of self-worth. It was due to the Tri staff coaching and instilling this into him and the other kids. I don't know what is going to happen to the future of the children of Marysville without this program. A very short version of a story I read recently. An experiment was conducted in a New York subway where a very famous, world-famous violinist performed. The night before, he had sold out his symphony in Boston at $100 per seat. He made $30 in the subway. The experiment proved that the extraordinary in an ordinary environment does not shine, as is often overlooked and undervalued. There are brilliantly talented people everywhere who aren't receiving the recognition and the reward they deserve. But once they arm themselves with value and confidence and remove themselves from an environment that isn't serving them, they thrive and grow. Tri-Academy was the perfect environment for my son and many others. It is detrimental to this district to lose this gem of a school and the talent and the understanding staff who work there.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Next, we have Mr. Rick Roger.
Good evening. Rick Roger, 218 South Maple. Currently, I'm the probate and juvenile judge for Union County, and a few of the overriding principles of the juvenile system are to hold juveniles accountable for punishment, but also for rehabilitation. Ensuring that all children have an education is part of that rehabilitation. I've heard that Tri-Academy may be a victim of the failed levy, and my purpose in addressing the board tonight is to urge you to reconsider that. And reconsider your decision to close Tri-Academy. During the years as assistant prosecutor for this county for about 29 years and now as judge of this county, I have observed that Tri-Academy provides an unmatched environment for these juveniles and children to grow and to be successful adults with different educational needs. I am aware that many children have earned diplomas from Tri-Academy since 2018. Of those graduates, many of them have been on probation through the juvenile court and have benefited Tri-Academy. My staff and I routinely interact with and rely on administrators, teachers, and professionals who work with Tri-Academy each day and with the students. Since 2017, the juvenile court has benefited immensely from the professional contributions of Ashley Robinson Thompson, Jennifer Hinderer, and Scott Stackhouse. And I recently became aware that the district will retain Scott Stackhouse, and for that I applaud you. Many students have been forever positively impacted by him. Additionally, I can state unequivocally that Tri-Academy's support for children who are also on probation with the juvenile court absolutely contributed to those children's success. Tri-Academy was designed to provide access to local, quality educational supports in Union County, and I appreciate that Tri-County was designed to fill this critical need. As you're aware, that each child is different. Each child learns at a different rate. Each child progresses at different rates. Not all students are perfect students. Some of those students have learning disabilities, have social anxieties, are suffering from mental illness, or addiction and may or may not be on probation through this county. In the juvenile court, we see children with similar needs, be they academic or social. Those children have a need for connection and to be shown a path toward success, and Tri-Academy does that. Mutually, we understand that some of these children simply will not succeed in an academic or social environment of the typical high school. These children may be different than the typical child, but they are not less, and we need to promote their education. Like this school district, at the juvenile court, we take each child as we find them, and we assess each of those children that come through our doors. We realize that some of the children's needs are greater than others, and while those needs challenge us professionally, our dedication to their best interests is always in the forefront. Previously, this district recognized the particular needs of certain children. Instead of busing them to existing programs in other counties, this district admirably prioritized those children and created a safe environment close to home in our community. This district did more than just tell these students and families that they mattered. You proved it to them. And as a result, you empowered them to seize their own success. The school district made astonishing strides to address truancy after changes to the truancy laws in 2017, and Tri-Academy played a critical role in student retention and success.
Excuse me, Mr. Are you about, I'm just trying to, if you need some extra time, then maybe we could.
I'm almost done.
Almost done? Okay,
Almost
great,
done.
great, thank you.
Because the children were kept in school here, both of the children and their families were able to take advantage of the supports available to them in the community. Our community responded and created even more services when we identified the need. Without Tri-Academy, I am very concerned for the future of these children. I am concerned that without Tri-Academy, many of these children won't go to school, will drop out, and will not receive a diploma. Without Tri-Academy, we risk failing them. Evidentiary studies have shown that people who do not earn high school diplomas are statistically less likely to enjoy financial stability and success. Studies have shown that financial instability leads to crime, to violence, and to a host of other quantifiable adverse effects on the community and economy. Those effects will have real and lasting impact on those children, their families, our families, and our community. When children attend Tri-Academy, they learn from informed, empathetic adults who give them hope that they can succeed, and those kids do succeed. For some children, Tri-Academy may be the safest and best school available to them to prevent them from dropping out. A child who isn't in school cannot build connections. But they can learn to capitalize on their resilience when they're in school. They can forge hope, and even though they are different and can be different, and even though they learn differently, they are not less. All because you, as a board, demonstrated to them that you would not give up on them and committed yourself when developing Tri-Academy. So I strongly urge you to reconsider your decision and thoughtfully take the necessary steps to do what is necessary to keep Tri-Academy open. And by doing so, you will continue to lift children up, will continue to show that getting an education is important for all children, and in doing so, will elevate our entire community. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roger. Next up is Janae Mulvane.
Hello, Janae Mulvane. I live at 420 West 6th Street in Marysville. So I work at Maryhaven, but I'm contracted through Marysville Schools as a school navigator. One of my schools I work at is Tri-Academy. Tonight, I would like to talk to you about the impact of closing Tri-Academy, especially on our students, staff, and community. So when you go to the school website and you type up Tri-Academy, when it comes up under the words Tri-Academy, it says, and I quote, where success is within reach, REACCH, which stands for resilience, empathy, awareness, communication, connection, and hope. That is exactly what Mr. Stackhouse and his staff bring to Tri-Academy daily. Also to mention, all his staff are trauma-informed training, so they know to meet each student where they're at. To be clear, students that go to Tri-Academy are not bad kids or kids that cause trouble. Students at Tri usually have experienced trauma that you would not imagine and are visibly affected by it. There are also students that cannot learn in traditional settings due to larger class sizes, being triggered by others who don't understand them, and they have a hard time communicating their needs. When students enter Tri-Academy, they are a whole different student. They almost instantly bond with Mr. Stackhouse and his staff, and students know that they can be themselves and not be judged. I have personally seen students who are struggling in the other high schools and are completely hopeless, possibly wanting to drop out because they will never get the credits to graduate. We then decide to send them to Tri-Academy, and next thing you know, they're learning and getting credits left and right. Moving on, most of the students that graduate because of Tri-Academy are the first generation high school graduates. Let me say that again. These students are the first in their family to get a high school diploma, which would have never happened if it wasn't for Tri-Academy. Lastly, I was there when Mr. Stackhouse broke the news to the students that Tri-Academy was closing. Through tears and disbelief, students responded with, "We can do a GoFundMe. We can do a bake sale. I'll chain myself to the building." One student said they wouldn't go back to MHS unless all the Tri staff went with them. This shows you how much these students love this school and staff. Please find a way to keep Tri-Academy open. The school district needs Tri, the community needs Tri, and foremost, the students need Tri in order to be successful in society. To go back to your website, to quote again, the Tri-Academy website has 3 core commitments: character, community, and career. Mr. Stackhouse and staff honor these commitments daily, and it shows because how great the students are and how they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Ellen Trott.
Ellen Trott, 22775 Holy Cross Epps Road, Marysville. And I know all of you, and this is really tough for me. First of all, I want to say how sorry I am that the levy failed. I worked hard to get people out there and try to help them understand how important that is. And I'm thankful we were able to find a way to make all-day, everyday kindergarten, and I'm begging you to find a way so that we can continue to help our at-risk kids and to continue with the staff that you all have put in place to love on them, guide them, educate them, and give them a future. I handed Diane an article, I couldn't believe it, it was in the Dispatch this morning, on youth and suicide and at-risk and mental health and everything that you all have put together to help those kids through Tri. One of the best things you ever did, we started a small program like this years ago after school. They had to come in the back door at the library, and some of my special ed teachers we paid them by the hour to work with our kids that were falling through the cracks. They wouldn't walk in the door with 1,000 kids. They wouldn't sit in a class with 20 to 30 kids. They were doing things out on the streets they shouldn't do. And with Tri, you have given 50 to 60 kids every single year a diploma and a future. A diploma opens the door for a good job. A diploma gives self-esteem. A diploma helps with mental health and future education, and you would be so surprised at how many of our kids who I work with now at the prison at ORW, so many of them were in prison without a diploma. They were dropouts. They have now finished an education, they now have moved forward, and they hate the fact that they were done with school without a diploma. They walked away because they didn't have anything like what we are providing. The adults that are part of the Tri Academy people. They are mentors, they are cheerleaders, they are a listening ear, they are a parent, they are a guidance counselor, they can help with mental health, they can help with drugs, they can help with alcohol, they can help with services in the community. They are adults that these kids know and trust when they may not have that at home. It's a small, safe environment. It's not like going into a building with 1,000 kids. And it helps so much with just handing them that diploma because those relationships last forever. When you moved it to East, it was one of the best things you could have done. It became a school. It gave those kids credibility. It gave them honor and to feel good about themselves. So thank you for doing that. You gave them an extra family. And I know somewhere, guys, in the big budget that I know you're having to cut back on, you can do this because 200 and some kids that I didn't know the total, but 50 or 60 kids every year you will give hope and you'll give a future to. And I thank you so much for even thinking that. I gave Diane the article. I hope she shares it with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I know, I think I can confidently speak for this entire board that we are some of the biggest cheerleaders of Tri-Academy, and what a difficult decision it was when it was part of our contingency plan. And I would guess that there may be some comments at the end of the meeting with regard to that. So anyways, thank you very much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Next, I would accept, oh no, it's not, we don't have a motion here yet. We need a presentation from our early college high school. So Ms. Hinder, Ms. Nemeth.
All right. Wow, I wasn't expecting all of that. I'm a little, sorry.
I can understand, yes. It is emotional.
What Tri does, what Scott and the staff does was incredible. They are incredible, and they're changing kids' lives, so I'll say that. All right, and so I will transition. So thank you for letting me be here and talk about what we're doing at the Early College High School. I'm gonna kind of fly through these slides. There's a lot of information, but really I'm gonna touch on what our big goals were for this year and kind of what we did and where we're headed as we go to the next school year. So if we go to the next slide. I think one of the best things that happened for us as a first-year team is that we are in STEM redesignation. So even though I was there in the beginning and I love STEM and the philosophy and pedagogy, this gave us a chance to really dive back into it and reinvigorate the staff and the students around what it meant to be STEM. So ODE and OSLN says STEM is about a culture of learning, students who are empowered and equipped, learning and teaching, so teachers with interdisciplinary and authentic learning, and then creating pathways to success. So how do we build the bridge between the high school experience and those next future steps, you know, whether it's community, career, it's college, all of those things. So that was our first goal, was all around STEM. So how do we do? Next slide. If you can see up here, we did staff surveys, student surveys, and we did a lot of walkthroughs. We used the OSLN rubric, and we had huge growth from August until April. So how did we do it? Well, it was our staff. I'm gonna be honest, our staff just really wrapped around and rallied around this cause of being STEM. There's 1,300 high schools in Ohio, only 30 are STEM designated, so it's an honor to be a STEM school. So we wanted to really lean into that and be special. We wanna be the best. So our teachers created interdisciplinary lessons. The design thinking was throughout the school. John Wing wrote a grant, and we have our STEM gardens, which brought in engineering and math into the science classroom. It really was everywhere. You'll see kids designing and creating projects, STEM solutions, where we had 14 community and business members come in and present problems. We now have authentic design learning in all seminars for all grades. It's a required part of what it means to be here. So as we go into next year, we're going to continue to grow that. Our pathways have some of the biggest now participation in the professional organizations. Our STNA, in the 7 years prior, we had 27 kids STNA certified, and this year we had 16, and we'll have even more next year. 2 pharmaceutical techs that were certified. Next year we have 129 of our seniors, about 150, 160 seniors signed up for internships, the biggest we've ever had. We're going to continue to grow those things, have interdisciplinary in every classroom. The Fab Lab and engineering standards are going to be embedded in core content. So you're just going to see that continuation of that very authentic STEM learning throughout the building. So next slide. Our next goal was our literacy goal, which kind of was around morphology and our disciplinary literacy. So morphology was in every ELA classroom. It had really been piloted with Max Orr in the Humanities 10 and then in 9, and we saw the growth in our PSAT in the different places that we wanted to see it. We expect to see that growth even more as it goes into all classrooms. We saw with our most at-risk 9th graders with their vocabulary acquisition going way up. Our disciplinary literacy, we had a cohort. They are getting very excited. It's going to be a part of a building-wide sort of push next year. We want to see reading and writing in every classroom. We want to see literacy, and particularly, to be honest, technical writing. We feel like our STEM building, we really need to hone in on what kind of writing they're going to be doing in their careers in college as they go on. Chance Nelson is super excited to kind of lead that PD with some other cohort members and to get into science classrooms to help the other core content teachers really know what it means to do literacy in the classroom. Next one. So our math was data-driven and personalized learning, really increasing that. But on another level, I think the bigger goal behind that is we hear a lot of kids who say, hey, I can't do that career, there's too much math. Well, I was in this major, but then this math class stopped me. We want our kids to be fully equipped and to do all math, to never be intimidated, to be resilient, to have every tool in the tool belt, as Brooke Young would say, to go and approach any math. So we need to know where they're failing, where they're struggling. We knew by looking at our data that we really needed to increase rigor. We have great remediation practices for our most at risk, but sometimes it seems like we're waiting till after they test to do that. So next year, we're going to be really looking at how we do these great remediation practices that we have in place that have helped kids after the test, put them beforehand. We're going to have sort of different ways. Lisa's really spearheading this work of getting standards-based checkpoints with test release questions as we go and looking at our pacing and our rigor. Next. And then our very last goal is around wellness, and we knew we wanted to increase recognition and support. Our positive behavior intervention and support, we looked at that in April of last school year, and then to August of this year, we saw growth across the board, and particularly with recognition. I was super excited. 40% of our students in April had said that they had had a student or a teacher recognize them in the past month. We were up to over 70%, and I think if you talk to them now, it would grow even more. We created every other Friday. We kick off our Friday by celebrating. We invite parents in, we invite students in and teachers, and we cheer and we eat donuts and we celebrate successes, and we have teachers speak to the successes of students. Second semester, we did turn that into once a month also a habit of mind celebration where teachers present to the students. Again, parents are coming in. It's a really fun way to kick off a Friday. We also really honed in on kids who needed support. So we looked at our at-risk data and behavior progress monitoring. We'll be increasing our supported study hall and personalized work plans for those kids just to make sure a lot of our kids who kind of fail across the board are failing for often behavioral or emotional, various other reasons, not always because of their academic ability. So making sure that we support those kids the best we can. And last but not least, I think we had 6 of our students graduate from Columbus State last week. It was really exciting to go down there and see that and the nervous energy of those kids as they were surrounded by college students. In the end, we want more of our kids to get there. So we have created an early college curriculum. We're building it, Lisa and I, an early college curriculum that our juniors will be delivering to our freshmen in Nucleus, and to help support every kid feel like they can do college if that's the path that they want to do. So that freshman and sophomore year, we're building that. By junior year, any kid who wants to do college courses can feel empowered and know how to access all of that. So that's it. That's our presentation. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Questions, comments?
I have a grandson that's going to be in your building next year.
Awesome.
And I am listening to you. I'm thinking about him and what his experience is going to be. And my enthusiasm and excitement for his situation is incredible.
Good.
I think I'm going to tell him he better get ready and he better get involved, because if he's not ready and he's not involved, he's going to miss a lot. So.
Well, and we're kicking off our freshman bridge June 1st, and our students are planning it with a teacher. We have a high RSVP, so we're going to get him involved day one before he even starts school. So it's exciting.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think he's going to have a choice
Yeah,
about whether he gets involved
exactly.
or not.
I just wanted to comment, we were able to get in the buildings and do building visits, and it's always very inspirational when we go to all the schools, but early college, high school kind of has a slightly different vibe. The kids are definitely extremely independent, and I truly appreciate that you can kind of, it's like a little bit like herding cats, I think, but it's so excited to see their excitement based at the end of year activities that you have to really make the experience special and make it a community.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation. It was fantastic. And apologize for not making the building visit this year.
Hi. So I feel like I've talked to you a ton this year, so
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I have one comment, and this applies to the early college, high school, but it also applies to every building that I was able to visit this year. As you walk down the hall and you open a door and you walk into a classroom, what you see are students engaged. They're working independently, they're working in small groups, they're working with their teacher or an aide, but kids are engaged in learning, and that is, I think, the hallmark of great educational opportunities. And every single building, any classroom, just open the door and walk in, it's incredible.
Absolutely.
I also thank you for your presentation and your dedication to our students. I think you mentioned STEM redesignation, correct? Can you,
Yes.
can you describe that process and the timeline for us?
So October 25th, they're going to come and visit our school, but we'll have submitted all of our artifacts by September 1st. Yeah. So we've been putting that together over the year. And part of, if you look at the data for the walkthrough, we did use Kathy McInnes, who does actually do this for other schools. So they will come and do a walkthrough, but first they'll have looked at all of our evidence. And I was able to use, to be honest, I looked at other schools who got redesignated, what they had turned in as evidence on the rubric. So if you ever wanted to see the rubric, it's those categories I gave you, but there's a lot of subcategories, and I can show you all that. We're ready. We exceed a lot of what others that have been approved, so we're feeling really confident about that. I'm not sure how long it takes after October 21st to hear, to be honest with you, but yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's been a lot of comments about the kids being engaged, but the other thing that I notice is your staff. And just the amazing collaboration, the willingness to all of the interdisciplinary work going on, cross-curricular classes, things like that. I mean, it's just, it's amazing, because really that, I think, models real life. You don't go out there and just work on one little thing. It usually is a combination of skills that you bring to the table to work on any task. So I really like that, and I think in a sense that kind of filters down to the students. They see the collaboration of the staff and see the value in that. So appreciate your leadership and the encouragement and allowing your staff to just be creative and try new things and be willing to fail and get up and try something else. And so that's great.
Yeah, thank you. It's amazing staff. They are always willing to tackle anything. So a lot of the things we're doing, it's they walk in and they say, okay, I have an idea, and then we roll. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and I would kind of like what Mr. Smith said too. We see that throughout the district, so it's just wonderful. So really appreciate you all. Any other questions or comments? All right, then we will move on to reports. So I believe Mr. Cox is here for our High Point report. Thank you for being here tonight.
So I'll apologize to the board for a second. I'm going to go off script for 1 second. I was co-chair for the levy committee supporting the levy. And to those of you that are walking out that were High Point are talking about, I'm sorry, Tri-Academy, I deeply feel that we let those kids down by not bringing the levy across the line, and I am personally very, very sorry for that. And then on a positive note, as it relates to the early college high school, they are amazing. I've got a daughter that goes there, and Jennifer Hinderer and her team is incredible and does incredible work. With High Point, I've only got a few things very quickly. So I mentioned in last month that Superintendent Smith was looking at another opportunity, and sad for him, happy for High Point that he's not going to pursue that opportunity, and he is going to stay with High Point, so that's great news for the school. Convocation for High Point is actually the next Wednesday, the 24th. It's going to be at 6:30 p.m. at the main campus. It's going to be outdoors, weather permitting. So if anybody wants to come and attend, that would be great, and you would certainly be welcome. Enrollment on the main campus for next year, they've gone over 500 students for the first time. Every one of the programs on the main campus is oversubscribed, and there is a wait list. Remembering Jermaine's question to me from a few months back about that, I did ask the question, can we get numbers on specifically how oversubscribed each program is? That was not readily available last night, but we do have another meeting next Wednesday, and we were promised to have that data, so I'll share that with the board at a later date, as well as what the intentions are as far as that programming is concerned. In addition to the 500 kids who are on the main campus, they are now servicing, Ohio High Point is, over 4,000 students through the partner districts as well as the main campus. And of course, Marysville High School is by far the largest of those. So that's another significant success story for High Point. So that's all I've got for tonight. Again, we have another board meeting next Wednesday. Last night was just a work session, so hopefully next month I'll have some additional information for you. Any questions?
Did you have? Nope. Okay, great. I don't think there are any questions. Thanks so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cox. Next up, we have our superintendent's report. Ms. Allen.
All right. I do have several things. First of all, I wanted to let the board know that Ohio Department of Education has named Marysville Schools a model site for literacy. As such, we're going to be a visitation location for other schools across the state for how to integrate K-12 literacy practices, offer professional development, strategic and integration and intervention. Today, actually, ODE and their team came and videotaped some of our high school staff members that are delivering reading intervention and will be featured in some releases they do as we move forward. So pretty excited about that and the work that's taken place really with our 512 grant, and it's aligned to that work specifically. May 3rd, the district also hosted a group of innovative thinkers from across the state who are working on integrating personalized learning as a statewide initiative. So there's kind of a centralized team that's been working for about a year now together. So they came to our site to kind of see it in action. Again, that will allow us to continue to be a key partner for other districts to come visit and see what's happening in our buildings. Really, we've been on this trend for some time and are considered a little bit on the forefront then. So we're pretty excited to serve in that capacity for the state as well. Enrollment, looking for kindergarten next year. Currently, we're running about 22 students higher than last year. We're currently at 365 for next year's enrollment. Alt-K, we have 39 students, which is 8 more than last year. We're at 40 becomes the cap, so we're almost at cap in Alt-K. Current enrollment across the district is 5,571, which is an increase of 159 students compared to this time last year. I wanted to update the board, as you are aware, but just kind of highlight, I'm not sure I want to highlight it exactly, but we had an oil spill outside of Early College last Friday, where over 200 gallons of oil were accidentally dropped as a part of the auto Tech Lab, Ohio High Point is our partner in that lab and actually took the lead and worked closely with Ryan Walker as well to get everything taken care of. Appreciate Marysville Fire Department. Certainly they were on the scene pretty quickly, provided equipment for us, worked in partnership with the EPA. There would definitely be a report filed, but we don't believe that will be cited for anything along those lines. So not the ideal situation, but everyone responded very, very well together. So that was great. I did send you an email earlier today for the June agenda. I'll be prepared to have a recommendation for a Raymond principal. We kind of hit pause on that and did not want to rush it on tonight's agenda, but we do have that for the June agenda. Last night, Todd and I met with booster groups at the middle school, high school, and head coaches or advisors to review the contingency plan impacts. We were able to share coaches and costs and answer a lot of questions. We also provided a transportation worksheet where they were able to make some estimates on their costs for transportation for the upcoming year. We were able to answer probably the most popular question, and I'll defer to Todd and his part. But really the concern is if we're still paying a pay to participate fee, what does that go to? There's kind of an understanding or a belief that will offset the entire coach's salary and there would be extra. That's not the case. I think there were 3 programs that had a little bit extra. And what we've done is we'll carry that extra and make a credit towards their transportation. So anyone who has pay to participate fees that exceed the cost of the board paid portion of the coach, those will go to a credit towards their transportation. So I would say all in all, that meeting went fairly well given the circumstance, lots of questions and trying to figure things out. I would tell you there's a lot of concern about the ability to sustain that model after 1 year. So I think that's important for the board to be informed and for me to express that concern on behalf of the booster groups and coaches. Reminder that graduation is Saturday at 7. If you haven't seen Vera for a gown or anything you need, please do that pretty quickly. If there is rain, which currently it does not appear that there is, in the evening, there will be a makeup the following day. So right now we look clear in the evening, maybe a little rain in the morning. Construction update. I did send to you last week that we're making such great time at Edgewood, probably even padded our timeline a little bit, but now we have a delay with casework and sinks, but we are hopeful for a partial occupancy by July 24th. Worst case scenario, we believe we'll be able to start, and let's say the sinks don't come in, we'll be starting without sinks in the classroom. We're not there yet, but that's a potential. Chestnut, we're still on target. We are still, I talked last meeting about waiting for a dry wall rating. We're still waiting for that requirement from the county, from my understanding. But everything else is progressing. So windows have been cut out. If you haven't been by in a while, some of that work is done. We'll still look at early fall because of the HVAC unit that will, we won't be able to take occupancy until that unit's installed, and that's kind of been a back-ordered item. Safety update. Last month, I also talked about the approval and installation of the shatterproof covering on our windows in our building. That installation is going to start in June 26th. That'll take about 2 months to go across the entire district. We are also using the very first safety grant we received, dollars for entry door access systems across all the buildings to add more keyless entry points. And that work is taking place, really starts as soon as school's out and leads to just about the time we come back in session. Spring testing is now complete and actually results are starting to come in. So we're expecting another release of results next week. So we'll put those all together and give an update once we have all of our data. Current staffing update, as I shared in the prior meeting, we're busy with the placement of staff members across the district as a result of the contingency plan. To date, across all classifications of staff members, we have 13 positions which are not being replaced, 15 transfers within the district. We have 16 open positions that are posted, and we have 5 anticipated openings. And what I mean by that is either a staff member has reported to us that they're looking somewhere else, or we've received a reference call, but we don't have a resignation at this time. So as those positions become vacant or not, we'll be following the contingency plan, depending on the grade level. That's all I have for this evening.
I just have a couple clarification points.
Okay.
The student population of plus 159, that is a net total, correct? That includes students that have left the district, subtracted from students that have come to the district, correct?
So anyone who has, for example, graduated early, I have not included in the.
I'm not talking about graduating early, but transferred out, left the district, moved out versus moving into the district.
Yes, move-outs are excluded from that number.
I just wanted to clarify that because there's been a lot of discussion in the community that was indicating that the numbers that we're reporting on growth are not accurate. And I just wanted to make sure that it was stated that those are indeed additional students coming into the district.
Indeed. If you compare our enrollment number of May last year to May this year, we're up 159 students. Ins and outs, that's rear ends and seats.
Thank you. Oh, one more question. The shatterproof coverings.
Yes.
Do we have an estimate on the cost of that?
Shared that last month, and I don't want to be wrong, but I thought it was 150, 138, 150 in that range.
Okay.
And that grant was for 350 with 350,000. The other grant, I believe, is right at 450,000-ish.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you.
I can get you the exact number, but it's in that 138, 150 range.
Yeah, I had one question that you mentioned something as we talk about the booster groups covering that not being sustainable. Is that because the booster groups aren't able to sustain it, or we can't? What
Yeah,
do you mean?
Fair question. I think there's a concern about their ability to fundraise enough to offset those costs much after this year. Some are struggling. We have a champion who's trying to fundraise for transportation for the whole district for the year. We gave them a number this year or today for that cost. So just they're trying to make plans and figure out this year, but also express serious concern about being able to keep that up on an annual basis, which is probably a fair assessment.
Following up to Bill's question about, thank you for meeting with the booster groups. I would like to kind of know which athletic programs are just like on track to cover their staff through the booster program. But ultimately, I guess my main question is, was there a discussion about raising pay-to-play fees to try to meet the demands of the staff and transportation? Where are those numbers? Is that something we could consider? I know we can say, well, the boosters can raise that money, but ultimately for sustainability, should we relook at our pay-to-play fees to maybe make those demands for transportation and
I mean,
staffing?
if you remember, we did have a conversation a little bit on that when we were discussing the contingency plan itself. And one of the concerns we discussed was access. If those fees became too high, it would maybe defer children from participating. And so that's why the decision was made. That's not saying that a future consideration might need to be that. But that's not part of this plan at this time.
And one just item along those lines, you know, some of the discussions we had last night at that meeting, I think there are benefits of having those things run through the booster as opposed to the district, you know, kind of creating an edict that here's the number you've got to pay, because in speaking with some of those booster heads, I'm sure some of them are looking for ways to raise all of that money to include transportation, but others are saying, yeah, we're not going to mess with raising money for that transportation. We're just going to, you know, handle that ourselves, whether that's parents driving vans or whatever the case would be. So, I mean, I think having them have that flexibility, there is a benefit to that. I'm not saying there's pros and cons to each, but that was a discussion.
Yeah, I guess not to debate this, but I think concerns with that is you still have an access issue with transportation. I mean, I have liability concerns, you know, self-transportation. And so ultimately, I think that should be something we could take a deeper look at, is if we need to. I mean, access is going to be still an issue with the contingency plan. But I understand. I just didn't know if that was discussed and if we have some hard numbers for what that could be. For safety, I know we talked about the safety grants for the film. Have we done where we stand with camera upgrades and making sure there's no blind spots at different locations for our buildings and playground areas and surrounding access? I know we were on building tours, and I like that Edgewood was putting a fence, you know, around. But I do know that there was some concerns about some blind spots with cameras. And are we using these safety grants to kind of upgrade our camera system to prevent blind spots, make sure we have good quality feed?
Go ahead.
I can't answer that super specific because that falls on Ryan, but I do know we are using the cameras we're using the grant to install additional cameras, whether it be higher quality in certain spots or also to hit blind spots. Now, I can't speak specifically to all the blind spots because I don't know that information, but yes, the grant is being used to upgrade camera systems.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. It's pretty long. A lot of things going on right now. Okay. Next up, our treasurer's report.
Okay. So for my report, giving an update on the May 5-year forecast, it's really just a little bit about the forecast and a lot about the levy. So first slide is our usual slide. There's not a lot of change in terms of you know, various items changing in the forecast. So what I did is I input a number for the implementation of the contingency plan. So that the red line, the expenditures, and this is really a moving target because we have resignations and hirings happening, I won't say constantly, but it's changing a lot. So what I did was input the number, a combination of salaries and benefits is a reduction of $2 million. Okay, so if you look at the forecast that I presented last month and the forecast right here, that is the only change, is that expenditures went down by $2 million in fiscal year 24, and that number carries throughout the 5-year forecast. I would note that the blue line, the revenue, you know, I thought a lot about, you know, what I should do with that number because, you know, I think we do expect state funding to increase. But I thought there also would be a lot of risk in taking a number based on total assumptions that are definitely going to change, putting a number out there that someone might, you know, kind of grab a hold of and have misinformation when we will know actual numbers probably by the end of June or early July. So I decided to leave that flat, but want to point out that we do expect that number to go up. That the current House budget is projecting an increase of $3 million in fiscal year 24. Rumors are saying that the Senate is going to reduce that number, but again, those are only rumors, so how, you know, we really don't know, and ultimately that was the reason I decided to leave it as it was. I would point out that the green line there, our ending cash balance, similar to the last forecast, we're in a cash deficit in fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. But I would note those numbers did change significantly. So in the last forecast, we were showing a $6.4 million deficit in fiscal 26. That number has been reduced to a $200,000 deficit. And then in fiscal 27, we were showing a $23.5 million deficit. That number is now showing a $15.1 million deficit. And again, it's worth pointing out that it's the contingency plan reductions that has changed that number. So how we decide to move forward with those cuts will have an impact on that forecast. Do we want to keep those cuts? Do we want to reinstate those cuts? So just want to make sure everybody understands that the expenditures are deflated because of that. And also worth pointing out that with this forecast, same as the last forecast, we're in an operating deficit in fiscal year 23 and in every year of the forecast. So as you can see, the red line is greater than the blue line, meaning expenditures exceed revenue in every year of the forecast, which is, in essence, why the contingency plan was needed.
Can I just interject something real quick here, since we're on this page? So kind of going back to that whole thing where you've got the contingency plan in here throughout the whole 5-year forecast right now. So if you look at this, that deficit of 15 million in 2027 versus last time being 23.5 million, that it could fall somewhere in between there. Those are the two extremes, basically. Right. Okay.
Yeah, there's so much. When you're doing a 5-year forecast, there's so many variables because I could have made the assumption that a levy will pass and that will fix things. So there's so many ways that you could. I try to do the most realistic picture, but somebody could make an argument to change something either way.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So our next slides, I'm going to be talking about some levy assumptions and some notes about the levy. I just want to point out that in no way is this supposed to be an all-inclusive list of levy options. It's really, I know we're going to be having meetings coming up to discuss levy options, so this is just kind of some of my initial thoughts, talked with Diane, and just to maybe get you thinking. I know each of you have been thinking on your own on what our next steps would be as well, so this is kind of just preparing for that discussion, not getting real specific in numbers. I'm not going to be throwing out millages because that state funding is going to, have a big impact on what that might look like. And then also I'm going to talk a little bit about, some of the reasons we heard why people voted one way or another. Again, not saying that's an all-inclusive list. There's multiple reasons that I won't be talking about, but these are the main ones that we heard. So some of the levy assumptions. One, looking at a future levy, I'm making the assumption that the cuts that were made from the contingency plan, I'm sorry, got ahead of myself here, that a levy that we would put on the next ballot, or if we were to go with cuts, that we would, whatever the case would be, we would want that to keep us off the ballot for 4 years. And again, that kind of goes along the lines of, there were people that said, well, why don't you just put out a 3 mil levy? That would probably pass. That may be true, but if we put out just a small little levy, then we're going to be right back on the ballot in, a couple years. And we've seen what happened with levy fatigue in this district in the past. And it makes it hard when you're passing a levy every couple years, and then it comes time to renew that levy and pass another small levy. And it's really not a sustainable system. So this is making the assumption that we would want a levy or cuts to keep us off the ballot for 4 years. Second, if we were to put a levy on the November ballot, make the assumption that we would want to reinstate the cuts. Now, again, that's not a, you could keep some, keep all, but again, when I'm talking about potential options, this was the assumption that I made. And again, I want to point out that this means that if we were making that assumption that the expenditure line in this current forecast is too low, we would have to increase that number to bring those cuts back. Third, it's worth pointing out, this isn't an assumption, this is a fact. November levy, the November 2023 ballot is the last option for us to begin collections in 2024. So why that is important is if we don't pass a levy in November, that means our next option would be May of 2024. If we pass a levy in May of 2024, we would begin collections in 2025. So in essence, if we were talking about levy revenues of $9 million, that would mean 1 year of not collecting that $9 million, which obviously would have a pretty significant impact on the 5-year forecast. And finally, as I noted, state funding we think is likely to increase, but we won't have a solid number until late June, early July. This could have a significant impact on a millage ask. For example, if you're looking at another property tax, you could potentially look at the idea of getting the same amount of revenue in total with a mix of state and state funding, increased state funding, and a new levy compared to what we were originally asking on the May levy. So here, I just wanted to look at some of the most common reasons that we heard based on the votes, kind of deciphering the results. So first off, there were 3,141 yes votes. In essence, what we could assume these people were saying is that they don't want the cuts that we made, they don't want those cuts to happen. They wanted to maintain the current programs and services and the educational level that the district was providing. A potential reaction to these voters would be to put an XX. I put XX because I don't want to put any numbers out until we have a better idea. So you could put another levy on the November 7th ballot to collect the same amount that we were looking for in May. Again, that number might be different because of increased state funding, which would be a good thing if that happens. So we would just want to select a millage amount that would allow us to restore those cuts and balance the budget as we talked about for May. Next slide. And again, like I said, I'm going to list some of the reasons we talked about for no voters, but these are certainly not all inclusive. So one of the reasons that I heard often was the tax increase is too high. So, we definitely support the school. We want to support the school, but the millage amount that was on the ballot was too high, and I can't support that amount. So a potential reaction for those voters, we would need to find a way to reduce the millage ask. You could do that by maintaining the cuts that we made based on this contingency plan, or you could find additional cuts to identify. We do need to be careful if we're making cuts. While we may help this group of no voters, we may also our current yes voters may not be happy if we make additional cuts, or maybe some of the cuts that we currently made were not brought back with a levy. Another way to reduce millage would be to shorten the time between levies, as I mentioned. But again, one of the downsides here would be levy fatigue. We would be on the ballot frequently. And finally, that potential state funding increase, optimistically, that would be a great way to decrease the millage of a potential ask. And then also you could look at a combination of options between all three of these things. Another reason we received was no, I'm on a fixed income. And I would say this is a little different than the reason of the tax increase is too high. Oftentimes these people would be saying, my hands are tied, really doesn't matter, no increase is acceptable for me. A reaction to these voters could be an earned income tax. Earned income tax is a better fit for seniors on a fixed income. With that earned income tax, Social Security and pensions are not taxed. It is a little harder to gauge, so when it comes time if that's something we were to determine, it's a little bit of a moving target because you're really estimating. It's a little harder to estimate what those numbers will generate. You can get numbers from the Ohio Department of Taxation, but again, that number is only as good as the time that they give it. optimistically, those numbers go up as the incomes grow in the community, but those numbers could also go down. So it is a little harder to gauge. The other negative with an income tax is the collection time it's a little longer for the collection time to get up to full collection, which means even if you pick a number that's generating the same amount of revenue as a similar property tax, it's going to take longer for us to actually start get that full collection. But as I said, one of the benefits is it typically grows, which having an income source that grows helps keep us off the ballot as often. One thing to be careful with that is there are, some of our current yes voters could become no voters with an income tax. There's a chance that some voters would pay more on an income tax than they would a property tax, but that number, that's going to vary by each person's situation. Some people may have an extremely valuable house, but a lower income. Some people with a super high income might be living in a lower value house, and that, that number will, vary by each person. And then another thing we'd heard from some people is, regarding, adding an additional income tax when they're already paying an income tax to the city of Marysville, and then the city of Marysville doesn't do that reciprocal income tax, where if you live in Marysville but you work in, for instance, Columbus, now you're paying income tax to both of those cities. And obviously, again, that state income, the state funding could have an impact on what percentage of an income tax would be needed. Next slide. So another reason we heard, we voted no because residential TIF reduces the funding the school would receive. So some people didn't want to support a new levy that didn't fully benefit the school. 66% of the new levy would go to the city in residential TIF areas. With the May levy, that would have equated to a little over $800,000, and that was a comment that we heard often. As we talked about in an earlier meeting, in this fiscal year, we gave up close to $4 million based on our existing levies, not counting a new money levy. And since 2016, that's equated to $19 million. A potential reaction to these voters, an income tax would alleviate this issue. With an income tax, people in residential TIF areas, the amount they're paying for the income tax is going to be the same as anyone else. So there's really going to be no difference between, it really wouldn't matter if there's a residential TIF or not. And then also another option for these voters would be to continue to negotiate with the city to try to get them to change their policy to allow basically exempt new levies from those residential TIF areas. Another one that I kind of grouped together, these were no voters. Some are, there are some voters that, regardless of the impact on the school, it's just no new taxes. I'm just always going to vote no because I don't want to pay any more taxes. And kind of in the similar line would be there's seems to be a growing group within the community that are anti-growth. So you're seeing the growth that's going on across the community, new houses, new businesses, more traffic, all those things. And people don't like that growth. I think some of those people felt like they don't have a voice or that there's no strategy for the growth. And the school levy was their first chance to really say no. Even though the school obviously has no say in that growth, that was their first chance to, I guess, voice their displeasure, and the school levy was kind of a scapegoat. Reaction to these voters, really the only reaction would be extreme cuts. And I use the word extreme because, round one of or phase one of our contingency plan, obviously, don't want to minimize the impact of that. Those are also very significant cuts, but a second round of cuts would definitely be more extreme. Some examples of that would be, going to a state minimum level of education. For example, that would be cutting unified arts, cutting school counselors, cutting electives. You could potentially look at the idea of closing Raymond Elementary. How does that work, considering we're growing? Well, I think you would look at the idea if we're cutting doing some of these extreme cuts, we're most likely no longer growing. We would begin losing students. You've seen what happened in some other districts when they cut sports. kids left. You had kids leaving and going to other districts, so we would likely start losing students. With a closing in elementary school, there would be several positions there that would, you could take some of those teachers and move those to other buildings, but then there's other positions that would be dissolved and would lead to savings. You could look at cutting all extracurriculars. Obviously, we made some reductions to extracurriculars with the transportation and some assistant coaches, but obviously the next step could be to cut all extracurriculars. And also you could look at cutting school resource officers. Not suggesting that a levy failure would lead to all of these things being implemented, just saying that some of those things would be needed. If all of those things were implemented, that would be more cuts than what we would need to do at this time. And also point out that, whenever we do have our levy on the ballot next, our cut list is probably going to look a little bit like that, or at least some of these items would probably be on there. Next slide. Okay, this is our last slide, and this is just a little bit about next steps. So one, as I said, the 5-year forecast, there's a lot of moving pieces right now. One, with the impact of the contingency plan, we'll have some time in the next few weeks that will firm up a little bit so I can update that with a better number. And two, our state funding. So my plan is to, when the information becomes available, update the 5-year forecast, and that will be, we would use that forecast when it comes time to make a decision of, what cuts to make, what type of levy to go with, what kind of millage would be needed, all those kinds of things. So I would say stay tuned for that. Second, we must pass a resolution. If we want to be on the ballot, in November, for the November 7th levy, we would have to pass a resolution by July 28th. So that would be our deadline if we do decide to go on the November ballot to pass a resolution. Our next steps also, we want to get levy feedback based on what levy options might the community feel would be best suited when moving forward, and also just analyzing the results of the May levy, just looking at some of the the reasons that people voted the way they did. And also pointing out that there's no option that will make everyone happy. You could make one person happy by making all sorts of cuts, but that's going to make someone else very angry. So there's no option that's going to make everyone happy. But what we do need to do is find a consensus, and what will keep our yes voters as a yes, and what will make some of our no voters turn to a yes voter. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Todd. That was lots of great information for consideration. We have questions.
Yeah, Todd, in the 5-year forecast, is there provision for increased numbers of students? Because I think the projections are that we should get an extra 100 students a year. Over the next 4 or 5 years, that's 400 to 500 kids. So does the 5-year forecast provide additional staff to meet that growth?
Yeah, so the current forecast, just like you said, assumes 100 students per year, which, as you can see from Diane's presentation, we were a little above that this year. But we assume with that growth, an increase of 4 new teachers per year. Now, again, that number is not going to be the same every year, and that also is going to vary based on, for instance, special education students and IEPs. Sometimes you need to add additional staff, but that's what's modeled in the forecast.
Right. Now, in talking about the 5-year forecast, I know that we've seen it, and you didn't have a slide that shows it, but on the 5-year forecast, what we're talking about is the operation budget?
Correct. It's general fund only. So the bond fund or the permanent improvement fund is not included.
Okay. And on that 5-year forecast sheet, at the bottom, there are a lot of rows that are zeros. Things like technology and bus purchases and so forth. And all those things come out of the permanent improvement budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so they are not in this 5-year forecast reflected anywhere.
Correct.
Okay. I know that we've heard a lot of comments from people that I suspect voted no. They said, you need to live within your budget. Some looked at our contingency lists and says, well, those are threats. To me, a threat exists where you have an option, where you can do something or choose not to do it. The living within our budget, the contingencies meet the short-term needs of the district, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, but longer-term needs, we would have to cut even deeper, and you've mentioned some things like closing down an elementary, eliminating all athletics and all extracurriculars, those kinds of things.
Yeah, along your line, it's tempting to look at the bottom line of the forecast and say, well, you've got a balance there. Why don't you just use that? But you need to look a little higher. That line 6.01, I believe, and that shows revenues versus expenditures, and that's what's called an operating deficit. We're spending more than we're taking in. So those people that are talking about, live within your means, well, we're not able to do that right now, and the only way to do that is either increase revenues or decrease expenditures significantly.
Right, and the last thing, in our budget, I know that by state law, we have to educate every single child in the district to the fullest of their ability. That's what the state says. And that includes students that have special needs that are higher cost. We have, I know, some students where we have 2 or 3 additional aides or support staff for that one student, and that's mandated. We don't have a lot of choice. And so is it possible for us to live within the income that we're currently serving and meet our mandates to educate every child?
Only if we do those extreme cuts that I talked about. So if we said we want to not increase revenues, but we're okay cutting all sports and cutting all electives and, no music, no band, no show choir, no art, all of those things go away, then, technically, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think some of those comments of live within your budget, people don't understand that when you do those cuts to a school district, you literally devastate the school district for a period of about 20 years. And that's assuming that there's a concerted effort to bring it back after that. And, people look at it and go, oh my, look what we just lost. And, it's a 20-year improvement. So it really, I guess, hurts me like a knife in the chest when somebody says, live within your budget, and the folks, out in the real world, like myself, are not living within our budget because our income is going up along with our expenses. The school's income is going down, and our expenses are going up, and there's just no way.
Another distinction that I wanted to talk about versus property tax versus income tax. So income tax collects from only income, okay? Commercial properties don't have any skin in the game with income tax.
Correct.
Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Okay. And secondly, what level of millage is currently being collected for all millage?
All millage, including other funds?
Today, yep, everything, yes.
For residential, that number is about 29 or 30 mills.
Okay,
Commercial, the number's different. I don't know off the top of my head. It's larger because we've had a larger increases in our residential valuation, whereas commercial has lagged behind, partly due to a lot of the TIFs and abatements that are offered. But I think the number for the commercial is closer to 50.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. With the 5-year forecast, I just want to start there. I know growth, the community growth, enrollment growth is reflected in the expenditure line. We see a dramatic increase over the next 5 years. Can we look at the revenue line? I know I've received personal questions about this. I'm sure my colleagues have as well. The revenue line over the next 5 years stays pretty stagnant. It maybe moves up $1 million. Can you help us understand if we're adding new homes, new construction, new commercial to support enrollment of 100 students per year, why is the revenue stagnant?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors at play there, and you just invited me to go into the weeds, so I'll do that. So, I can just go line by line. So the top line is our real estate taxes. As you can see there, we're seeing some increases. The reason we're seeing increases, now we've talked a lot about House Bill 920. As property values go up, effective millage goes down so that we receive about the same amount of taxes, you pay about the same amount of taxes. House Bill 920 does not apply to inside millage. So we have 4.7 inside mills. So when the property values went up significantly with the reevaluation, we did see new revenue. So you're going to see that new revenue in line 1.01. You're going to see an increase in fiscal 23. And because we're on fiscal years, you're going to see that split between 2 years. So you're going to see fiscal year 24 increase a decent amount as well. Then you're going to see fiscal year 25, it's going to be relatively flat because there's no revaluation. So there's really no increase that we're going to see other than we might receive a little bit for new construction. That's going to be usually a pretty low, six-figure number, maybe $100,000, something like that. Now, interesting, with this 5-year forecast, we do assume that we hit the 20 mil floor. We've talked a lot of that in the past. So once you've hit the 20 mil floor, House Bill 920, in essence, kind of goes away unless you get off of the 20 mil floor, which means now all 20 mills are counted kind of like that inside millage, where if there is an increase in valuation, we would get increased revenue. So there is a benefit, our community's got a really low tax rate, paying only that 20 mills. For the school, there's a benefit. We do actually start to see some incremental increases each year. The line below that is public utility personal property tax. That's taxed on, for instance, utilities or railroads. We've been very fortunate historically to see some pretty nice increases there. We actually saw a decrease this year, I think, because of some delinquencies, but we expect that to just very minorly increase throughout the forecast, so not enough to really move the needle. The line below that is our state funding. As I mentioned, I do expect that number to increase. So, no secrets there. I expect that number to grow, but I didn't want to just put in a guess when we'll actually know the real number in probably about a month and a half. So that number I do expect to go up. Right below that is also state funding. So then looking further down, 1.05 personal property tax allocation. That is two numbers in there. One is homestead and rollback received based on real estate taxes, and two is our tangible personal property tax reimbursement from the state. So we've talked a lot about the TPP. Back in 2005 or so, we were receiving over $9 million per year in tangible personal property tax revenues. That was phased out by the state. We were supposedly held harmless for a while, but that only lasted a little while. Then they started giving us these reimbursements that were phasing out. So we've been losing $600,000 to $700,000 per year. That's why you see that number decreasing, and that's why when we've been talking to the community about our revenues being flat and or decreasing, that is the main driver as to why those numbers are going down. You'll see out there the numbers from 23 to 24 go down, then from 24 to 25 go down. You actually see it start to increase a little bit in 26. That's because 25 will be the last year, if not 24, the last year we receive any TPP revenue. After that, it will only be homestead and rollback in that line, and you would expect to see slight increases in homestead and rollback based on increases in value or new construction. And then finally, the last line there is other revenue. One of the biggest drivers in there is our interest revenues. So really big increase this year. We're probably going to end up close to $1 million in interest, whereas the previous 2 years, with a similar cash balance, we only received around $300,000 or less. So this year, I think, was a little bit of an anomaly. I would expect interest rates to drop down. Regardless of interest rates, our cash balance is going to drop down, which means we got less investable balance. So we're expecting that number to drop as well. Maybe a long answer for a short question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know a lot of people, when they just look at the 5-year forecast, it doesn't click for them. So thank you for going into the details for that. I know moving on from the 5-year forecast, moving on to some of the levy assumption, you listed some feedback. What was the sample, like how was this feedback collected? Is it just people calling in or people that you've talked to, or was there surveys gone out? What was the sample size and how was this data collected?
More anecdotal than that. This is based on comments we've received, whether that be people who have talked, actually called me or emailed me, people that have talked to Diane, people that have talked to our levy committee. Our levy committee, was pretty active on, kind of following the comments on social media, so kind of getting that. So I would call it anecdotal, not specifically from a survey or anything like that.
Okay, and the potential November contingency plan, who created that list?
That was on my forecast?
No, not the forecast, but there was a Raymond closure.
Oh yeah, I talked to Diane and said we talked about what would. Actually, we had a meeting with me, Diane, as well as other administrators. What would potential next cuts look like, and so that was what was discussed.
Are intervention specialists required by the state? They are? Okay.
State and federal guidelines dictate caps and
I wanted to ask because
caseloads
with the school
and
being
et
on
cetera.
there. Okay.
Yep. So for example, it's all based on that student's individualized IEP. We have students who require a one-on-one nurse, for example, and some of those we don't even know the year before. So all those are dictated by mandates through the student's IEP and qualifying area.
Yeah, if I can interject, IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is a federal source of funding. And the federal government, when they passed that, said that they would pay 40% of the increased cost to educate students with disabilities. The federal government has never paid 40%. Current funding level is somewhere between 11 and 15%. And so that means all of the additional cost is out of local or local state funding, the funding that we receive. And I know in my research to go to Washington and talk to our legislators in Congress about this, they have to record how many minutes each day the specialists work with each child. And it's the bureaucracy that is involved in that is staggering. Hopefully, Washington will help by providing some additional IDEA funds. I know that OSBA has been successful in getting their attention, and I think a couple of years ago there was an increase of some kind, and I may be wrong on the federal percentages at this point by a little bit, but I know they're under 20%. and probably closer to 15, but there was a slight increase at one point, but not nearly enough to pick up the cost for what Congress said, so.
Are literacy coaches the same? Literacy coaches, instructional coaches, are those all in the same boat? Are those required by the state to, when I see a school on the list, that's, one, I guess I would have liked to have this out, like, we usually review some content.
I thought I would interrupt. We're not suggesting that is the contingency list at all.
Okay.
What we're saying is those are the types of things and the extent of what you'd have to get at to get to the number we need to get to. That is not our recommendation for a list. We're not asking for you to approve anything.
No, I understand you're not
okay.
asking to approve it, but it's listed and it's in the public discourse, and so that's why I wanted to ask some of those questions, because that's,
Yeah.
you know, pretty
And just so you,
Yeah.
I mean, do you have more questions? Because I've got.
No, thank you. I'm done. Thank you
Sure.
just for clarifying.
So I just
those
wanted to
things.
say, obviously this is, that's a lot to absorb. So as I look over the next 2 months and knowing that if we make the decision to put something on the November ballot, that decision would most likely be made at our July 20th regular meeting, because you need a little bit of time to have the auditor approve things and certify things and stuff. So between now and July, I would like to be scheduling a work session. Let's get through the end of May, graduation, Memorial Day, but have one maybe in June before our June regular meeting, just to kind of talk about some of these things, general concepts about, we're not going to have the final budget numbers then, but how strongly do we feel about going on in November, property tax versus income tax, maybe any updates on work that the levy committee has been doing, things like that. So in June, and then in July, I would anticipate two meetings before our two additional meetings before our July 20th meeting. I realize that this is vacation time for many people, so I'm just asked that you let me know if there are dates that you're going to be unavailable, and we'll try and figure out how we can schedule some of those meetings to have these discussions. So,
Sue?
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to thank Todd and Diane. I agree with Jermaine that it's shocking when you look at some of the things that were mentioned, but I know one of the criticisms that I had, I think 2 people tell me, was you sprung your contingency plan at the last moment. Now, we may have talked about it months
January.
earlier, but
Approved it in January.
But I think it's important, and hopefully people will recognize that we're constantly evaluating, we're constantly looking at things, and that helps to give me a sense of where we might be. Not looking at those as the specific things that we would do, but just trying to get the size and the scope of what we might have to be looking at. So, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Todd. That was a lot of great information, helpful. Okay, I think we're up to my report. We had a community coffee on May 7th, and obviously that was right after the levy. So thank you, Jermaine, for sending out an update on. Jermaine and Bill met with 11 residents. I think, some of the concerns in there have been answered now. There were some concerns about all-day kindergarten, and obviously we did revise we had a special meeting on May 10th, and at that time we were made aware of some potential pretty significant changes in state funding. Again, we know it's not final, but because of that information, we did agree to revise our contingency plan and change the hiring freeze to 5-12 instead of K-12. So that allows us to continue offering all-day kindergarten. Did you want to make any other comments about the coffee, or?
I just want to thank Bill. We stood in a circle, like a school circle, for probably over an hour, listened to a lot of, and I want to thank the citizens for coming out. Yeah. It is very impactful to hear directly from our constituents, to hear directly from their concerns, what their thoughts are. And I don't have the recap in front of me, but kindergarten was a piece, extracurriculars was another piece, and it seems like the community says, we can solve some of these problems, and let's figure out how to solve them. Obviously, increasing tax revenue is a solution, but we will continue the work of trying to provide high quality education for our students. So that's kind of the route.
Okay, and then just note that we did add an extra conversation opportunity at Dalton Union on June 7th at 6 p.m. I'm assuming that we'll be scheduling June 11th and July 16th for additional copies, either at the library or potentially at the Avalon too. I've talked to them a little bit. I think they would be interested. Chamber meeting and events on April 27th. There was a business impact breakfast at our early college high school. It was a superintendent's panel, but they started off with Mrs. Hinder and a group of students sharing a little about early college high school and their experiences there. It was really a great opportunity, I felt, to showcase our student staff and our superintendent. As people have commented, we did complete our spring building visits. I'm sure, again, at the end, we're going to hear some comments from people, but I did just want to say that when Nan and I, our very first visit was to the transportation office. We have an interim director there, George, and right after we introduced ourselves, he just said, he goes, oh my gosh, he goes, I have never been in a district with more professional and kind employees. And he stated this several times. He's been in, and he has quite a bit of experience. He says, I'm just a, gray-haired old guy here, but it was just a nice way to start those visits. And I appreciate, I know Jermaine invited some guests to accompany him as well. I mean, I really wish everybody could come in and visit our buildings. They would be amazed at what's going on. Let's see, several of us attended Board Leadership Institute, which is a day-and-a-half event just for school board members. Bill, Dick, do you have any brief comments, any highlights that you would like to share?
That was so long ago, it's hard to remember.
I understand. I had to pull out my notes.
It was very educational, but I didn't bring my notes on that with me. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I attended two meetings that I'll mention. One was from the Fair School Funding Group, and they kind of recapped the steps that they've gone through and kind of where we are in the process at this point. And the other one was with the Chief Deputy Auditor, and he had an agenda that he wanted to talk about, but the room was very interested in the auditor's comments concerning levy activity. Superintendents and treasurers, teachers, board members, and so forth. And the general tenor of the room was that his comments had raised uncertainty. His spokesman said, we haven't changed anything, and I suspect that's probably true, but the way in which the comments were delivered certainly created a lot of anxiety among board members and staff as to what was legal and appropriate and what was not. And I know that in the levy campaign, we tried as board members, and I know our administrators and others tried to, be the strictest standard of ethics in terms of how they conducted themselves and the types of information and comments that they made. So it was interesting to be a part of that conversation.
I bet. I know. I went to a session that was titled, What Would Ted Lasso Do? And since I'd recently finished watching the first two seasons, it was a lot of fun. There were some clips in there that really did put made me think about the value of leadership through trust, engagement, and relationships, and really how that relates to serving on any kind of a team. So I thought that was helpful. And then also Jim Mahoney led a session based on his recent book, To Lead is to Teach. That also happens to be the book club book at OSBA right now. They're probably done with it, and I'm still crawling through that book. I think I'll be done in another week. But I thought it was interesting. He suggested that that boards take the Clifton's Strengths Finder assessment as a governance team and use that information to best utilize each of our strengths. So I don't know, that might be a future work session when we don't have quite so much on our plate. But that's it for my report. So student achievement report, Ms. Savage.
Good afternoon. I'll go ahead and forward the Student Achievement magazine that comes from Ohio School Board Association. It had a couple interesting things. It includes a survey asking if school boards have a student representative on their board. So I went ahead and answered the survey, and it's just something we should think about, that we've got a lot on our plate right now, but maybe for maybe next school year, something we should think about. I like to focus on local achievement here. So all the valedictorians were listed in the JT tonight. And so I'd like everyone to take a look at that, along with all the scholarship awards that were given out. There has to be thousands and thousands of dollars worth of awards given out to our students. So that's high praise for our student body. We were also able to attend the National Honor Society induction ceremony, and again, speaking to high academic qualities among a portion of our students. Career Signing Day at the Avalon, we were also able to attend. Wonderful. Some of our students are choosing to move directly into the trades, and there is such a desperate need in the trades that if someone is interested in the trades, there are numerous businesses willing to pay for your education right out of high school. So if parents are out there listening, I'd like you to think about that. Also, College Signing Day was this past week. Also, we had the State Welding Championships from FFA. What a wonderful group of young men those are. And just so much student achievement here at our school district.
Thank you very much. Legislative report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. My report is kind of long, but I'll try to keep it brief. The House has passed the biennium budget, noted a rather long list of things that are listed there. Some that jump out at me is that the Fair School Funding Plan was implemented for 2 more years, and as Todd said in his report, that benefits our district, and I would encourage anyone. The issue is now in the Senate. Bill Reineke is our senator. Please contact him and encourage him to follow the lead of the House. I would note that included in the budget proposal is an increase in the state minimum for teacher salaries. So that will impact our 5-year forecast. Todd's talked about it being kind of a moving target, and that's another piece that could move. I've met 2 weeks ago with Representative Richardson. We talked about our budget, the loss on the levy. I thanked her for her work. She's been a staunch ally for the Fair School Funding Plan in the House Education Subcommittee on Finance, and talked with her about some other legislative issues before the legislature. Had a phone conversation just the other day with Senator Reineke, and we talked about the budget. We also talked about some of the issues and problems that we faced in locally. and some of the issues that cause people to question how to vote. I also contacted Senator Brenner. He serves the Dublin area, but he's come and visited our school district, and I've had conversations with him over several years, just more happenstance than anything else. I accepted earlier this year an appointment to the Consortium of State School Board Associations Federal Legislative Advocacy Group. And in September, the end of September, I'll be going to Washington, D.C. I've given you a little bit of information about what the responsibilities are there. There are 2 people from each congressional district, and I've been teamed with Renda Klein, who is the Mansfield School Board President, and we'll be putting together a presentation for Congressman Jordan and Senators Brown and Vance. I've listed some bills of interest. Those are the same things that have been on the list. And then I concluded with the information that I sent to the senators and also to Representative Richardson about our financing and some of the circumstances in our district. So that's my report.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? I would just point out, I know, really appreciate your agreeing to serve on that, on the FLAG group, the Federal Legislative Advocacy Group, I think. And just to note that per our policy, that any of those travel expenses that aren't covered by OSBA are covered from our board account. So I appreciate you taking the time and working with our legislators to help educate them about the challenges here in our district and state. So that's great.
Yeah, I appreciate the board's support. It's hard to point a finger and say, I said this, and then this happened, because that's not the legislative process. But as I mentioned,
it's planting seeds and watering them.
Seeds. And as I mentioned, there was a funding increase in IDEA. We were able to get the Fair School Funding Plan put in place. It provides very transparent, very explainable state funding. It is unique in all the other funding models that have ever been tried in this state. And if it was challenged as to constitutionality, it stands a better chance of being constitutional than obviously those systems that were declared unconstitutional. So,
thank you. Mr. Ferguson, Safety and Drug Report.
No report tonight, thank you.
All right.
I did go to the last meeting, but we had our presentation last meeting, and that was the same week, so I don't have any new information to share.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see. I would now accept a motion to approve draft minutes from our April 20th regular meeting and our May 10th special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ferguson, second by Mr. Keck. Any comments, corrections, questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Yes. Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Next, on to the Board of Education items. The first item, there's no motion involved here. It is simply pointing out that we do have some first read policies. I would note that the first 2 policies are related to College Credit Plus and military students. And then the third one is dyslexia supports. It's not a required policy, but it does follow law that's in place. So anybody out there watching this is, they are part of the public content. You can take a look at them. The first two adjustments required by new legislation. The third one, it's optional, and our policy committee just thought that that would be helpful to have that as a policy, showing that we are following law on that. So if you have any questions or comments, either tonight or between now and next month, you can reach out, I think, to Mr. Langhouse with those questions. Okay, any questions now? Nope, okay. Next up, we have I would accept a motion to approve the resolution for an asphalt project bid proposal.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith. Do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
Second by Mr. Keck. Okay, questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Where is this asphalt going?
So the resolution, there's information in it that lists everywhere. Now, it's really a mixture of a lot of different areas. So there's a lot of like sealing and restriping going on. I think the biggest bulk is at Bunsell, some of the work being done there. Then there's also some work being done at East for the central office is. So I think that's really the biggest areas when it comes to actual asphalt improvements, but the other areas is just a lot of sealing and new lines and those kinds of things.
Yeah, actually, like there's a list. So Mill Valley, Northwood, Creekview, Bunsold is the biggest one. A little bit at the high school in the north and south ends. At the STEM school, there's some. Let's see, and the district offices. So there is a section on board docs that you can access that lists all of those things too.
Okay, okay, I look probably not thoroughly
maybe
enough.
Maybe you didn't go down far enough
Yeah.
to find that. Okay.
All right, Todd, is this out of the general operating budget, or is this permanent improvement budget?
This is permanent improvement, and it fits within our regularly scheduled fiscal year 24 permanent improvement schedule.
And so this expenditure, let me ask this, can permanent improvement funds be used for operations?
No, so this will have no impact on the 5-year forecast or operating funds.
Okay, thank you.
Do you not think that it's a bad look to approve such a large asphalt project in the middle of doing cuts, even though we've gone over the bucket thing a million times, but
I think there would be a lot of danger in neglecting some of these maintenance items because of the operating funds. So what we end up doing is, a lot of this work that's being done is to maintain our existing asphalt. So if we don't do it, we're going to end up costing ourselves more in the long run. So in my opinion, I think we would want to stick with it because it's within the PI budget and it's has no impact on operations and has no impact on these cuts that have been done. I think when I got here and Diane was early here, there was a lot of kicking the can down the road. We were way behind on asphalt, so it took years to get caught up. And I think at that point the general fund was suffering because we were having to not do things, and sometimes we'd have to kick general fund money over so that we could do things. So we've gotten to a point where we don't do that anymore. The PI fund is doing what the PI fund should. So there would be some danger if we stopped keeping up with that.
Is there some guarantees and warranties with this work? Because I know we replaced part of the Bunshold parking lot the first year we opened the building, and I have no idea whether that was under warranty, but it just seems like we're doing a little bit more than we should have to on that yearly. I don't know.
I'd have to check with Ryan on what the guarantee or warranty is. I can get you an answer.
Also, one of the parking lots was going to be completely renovated, including subsurface drainage, and I just wondered which one that was? Because obviously I didn't see.
I don't know that answer.
Okay.
I'll have to get you an answer to that.
Yes, I do. So in fiscal year '23, when we adopted our permanent appropriations, the asphalt budget was $111,000, and the projects that were recommended to be done during that year, which is the current year, is Mill Valley and Creekview. Were those, and that was seal coating and stripping, parking, were those projects completed in Mill Valley and Creekview this year?
Whatever was proposed in the fiscal '23 budget was done, and that would have been done last summer.
Last summer, because I know those buildings are back on the list for this year. This $500K, what year's budget is this coming out of?
Fiscal '24.
And have we adopted fiscal year '24's budget yet?
Not the appropriations, no.
Okay, because my concern is that the whereas clause, which is a factual statement, says the board has sufficient funds to repair and replace asphalt. We haven't adopted the fiscal year '24's budget, and so we're, this resolution will bind us to, this allocation of funds, but we haven't really looked at the budget yet. So I think, in my view, we should adopt the budget and then adopt this resolution, or the same night. That way we know with 100% certainty that the board has taken action to, to make sure that whereas clause is a factual statement.
So when I do the appropriations, I ensure there's an amount large enough to handle some of these projects, because when you're looking at projects that have to be done in the summer, our fiscal year ends June 30th. So that's beginning of the summer is part of one fiscal year, end of the summer is part of another fiscal year. So when the board approves appropriations in, like, for instance, fiscal year '24 appropriations, there'll be a number in there that would allow Jeff and his team to do certain projects that will have to begin. So for example, we'll have to do a purchase order for this asphalt project basically now, but we probably won't pay that money until July. So we're crossing over fiscal years.
But has this board adopted a budget for fiscal year '24?
No, but we do have an appropriation that allows for this to be done.
Has that appropriation been confirmed by this board?
Yes.
What year, when did that take place?
June of 2022.
June of 2022? Okay.
So we're working right now under the appropriations that were approved in June of 2022.
Well,
that number was around $8 million.
So I know in June 2022, I did reference that, the budget of $8 million, the appropriation for that was $111,000, just a little bit above that. I have that. I think I provided that to you in the email earlier this week. So that's what we approved for fiscal year '23.
So what the board approves is not the PI forecast budget each month or each year. What the board approves is an annual appropriation. So as long as we stay within that appropriation, we are in compliance with what the board is approving.
So with the $8 million, $5 million went to the renovation projects for East and Edgewood, correct?
Yes.
And so then there's $2 million left over, and we have not expended that $2 million?
We have not exceeded appropriations. I mean, that would be against audit. We've received an audit award for almost every year I've been here, and if I was exceeding appropriations, we wouldn't get that. That would be a audit citation.
Okay.
So it sounds like it's kind of a difference between appropriations versus a budget and timing due to when work has to be done and when you need to have purchase orders out there in order to get things started. But like you oversee the appropriations, and you can't request something if you don't have the appropriations.
Correct. And you may remember in the past, there's been years where I've come to the board in May or June and said, well, our permanent improvement fund appropriations aren't high enough because we've got to start, maybe more summer projects or larger dollar amount summer projects than we anticipated. So I've asked for an increase in appropriations because of that.
Right.
As of now, this year, that's not necessary.
Okay. And I'd also just kind of want to comment, Nan, on your comment. I think one of our responsibilities is to make sure that we're maintaining our facilities. And so if someone still doesn't understand the difference between the buckets, then we can try and keep on, educating and everything. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important that we do what we need to do to maintain our facilities.
I would just also say, I mean, you can vote however you like. I won't, not trying to influence that, but I would say there is a window to do projects. We really can't do asphalt projects when school started.
Right.
And also, you did point out, Jermaine, the Mill Valley, or one of the schools was on here. So sometimes when they do these projects, so certain schools have multiple parking lots. Right. So like I think Mill Valley may be one of the ones where you've got a parking lot that's more of a staff parking lot, then you've got another parking lot that's kind of separated. So sometimes those are on different cycles.
Yeah, so if I may, the breakdown of that $8 million, because I have this, we have the renovation project, which was $5 million. Debt payments was $600K. And was that's the term, that's already out the door, correct? Mm-hmm. Copiers, do we upgrade copiers? That was $154K.
That's not an upgrade, that's an annual.
Annual, but that's out the door. That's been done. Buses, that was $375, but was that, we actually did more than that, correct?
Yeah, it cost more than that.
Let me just scrap that, because I'm looking at this breakdown, which was the $8 million. What I would prefer to do is table this until we adopt the next year's fiscal year 24's permanent appropriations. That way we know for sure. Because right now I'm a little unsure.
Jermaine, if you're actually questioning whether we've exceeded appropriations or not, I can send you a budget ledger that will show you the room we have left. I mean, that is my job to monitor and make sure we don't exceed appropriations, and I do a darn good job of that.
I'm not questioning.
You are questioning that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments as far as can you help me out with that? Is there any?
I didn't make a motion to table.
Okay, all right. If there are no other questions or comments?
You'll probably want to turn your speaker on.
Sorry, if there are no other questions or comments, I'll have a roll call, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
No.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Next item, I would accept a motion to approve the May 2023 five-year forecast.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ferguson,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Questions or comments?
Todd, I appreciate you updating this five-year forecast. You've had to incorporate a lot of changes, the contingency plan implementation, some adjustments based on what we believe is going to happen in Columbus. I know it's a continuous moving target to try to guess what next month is going to look like, particularly as we're coming to the end of the biennium budget discussions down in Columbus. So I appreciate the explanation as to all of your rationales for the money that you indicate in the budget.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. I do have a concern that the revenue line is very conservative, but I think that is a fair. It's fair to be super conservative on anticipated revenues, and understand that we are a growing community, and we probably should look at, I guess, on the expenditure side, what the reality could be with 100 students per year. So to the public who has a concern about the revenue, I think I agree that this could be conservative, and I think, Todd, I think you might even admit to that. However, I think that's our duty, is to be not super liberal and optimistic with we're going to get flush with revenue from just the growth coming in from commercial residential or potential state funding. But also we have to know what the target is to provide services and what the costs are for hiring new staff to provide for that enrollment growth. So that's why I'm supporting it, because I hear people's concerns about the revenue side, but I think that's our duty to be super conservative on anticipated revenue until we know otherwise. So thank you.
Along those lines, I do want to point out, I agree it is conservative, but there's only one line that I would, use the word super conservative. That would be that state funding. When you look at the other lines, like for instance, real estate tax, I would agree that I'm slightly conservative there, but I'm not. I would, you can only go off of assumptions, so I could, we could be totally wrong one way or the other. But the idea of conservative there is not conservative that it moves the needle of a levy. I think you're talking the idea of potentially, maybe $100,000 or something like that. And you can see year after year, our numbers have been, typically very close. This year was off because of that reval, coming in at 25%. So that wasn't anticipated. But again, I just would point out that the state funding, which I noted, is the only item in there that I would call, where we're being very conservative, but not because of anticipation, just because we don't know a number yet.
Right. Well, and I would also point out that on the expenditure side, I feel like we're being conservative by maintaining the contingency plan throughout the whole 5 years. I certainly hope that's not the case.
Right.
So, but anyways, okay. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Cack?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Last item in Board of Education is I would accept a motion to approve the resolution of intent to participate in the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership Program. Whew. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Kett?
Second.
Second by Ms. Savage. Okay, would you like to explain a little bit
so
about this?
I gave you guys a heads up on that because I didn't want it to take you by surprise. We're not, with this resolution, we're not saying we're building a new building. What we are saying is we anticipate that could be a thing in the future, and if there's a chance to take advantage of state dollars to help save our community money, that we want to be in a position to do that. This doesn't even lock us into doing that. We could, by passing this resolution, we could entirely, do nothing with this at any point down the road, but there is a benefit to locking in now. One, it puts us kind of on that waiting list, so when the time does come, we would be in line to potentially get the funding. Also, there's a local share where when you use these state funds, you've got to pay a certain amount of local money, so we could start taking advantage and kind of banking some of our current expenditures towards that local share. So, for instance, when we do some of our building improvements out of our PI fund, that can be counted towards that local share, so there's a benefit of getting in early.
Is there a cost?
No cost.
And there is a requirement that you have to be over 2 years away from eligibility for state assistance there. So that's
Correct.
why you're being proactive and trying to get this in place.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
What are some of the, you mentioned that this would help. Would this pay for like a projection enrollment study? Did you mention that?
So they did mention, because when they look at your eligibility, there's a lot of different things they do. So one of those items would be an enrollment study. So that was one of the side, kind of a side benefit that we thought that might maybe get a free enrollment study within maybe the next year, because we did say we're probably going to be looking to update that enrollment study anyway. So this would be a way to get that for free.
And there's a whereas clause saying that the school board intends to move forward with the ballot issue or apply other local resources and fill in the blank. Is this binding, and what year would that? Or are we gonna put
It's
in
not
there?
binding at all.
Okay.
I do have to put in a date where we would, use the word anticipate. So I would use the date of November of '28, only because, we've talked about the no new millage bond issue when our debt comes off. So November of '28 would be that first opportunity if we got there, but we're not binded to, like I said, we're not binded to doing anything. This is just kind of, kind of putting your name on the wait list.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you for being proactive on that. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the treasurer CFO action items.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage,
Second.
second by Mr. Keck. Any comments on your items?
Yeah, a couple things to point out. Cash flow, we're still pretty much on the same trend, but I did want to point out, you see that large negative number there in real estate taxes. I mentioned that last month. That's just the reconciliation. When we get our final settlement report from the county auditor, it tells us where everything needs to go between general fund, bond fund, PI fund. So that's just a reconciliation for that. As you can see, expected versus actual is actually pretty close. So that number is just a reconciliation. Also, that large variance there under property tax allocation is just a timing variance. That'll be made up next month, so you should see that variance go away next month. Under appropriations, the main thing I'd point out there, we did get a school bus grant from the state. That's $45,000. That's going to be used for a bus that was already planned to be purchased, because $45,000 does not buy a bus. But that will help save the Permanent Improvement Fund some money on a bus that was already going to be purchased. So that was some good news.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right, roll. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
For the fiscal appropriations, I'm very glad about the school bus grant. That's a great, is that going to be, you said that's going to be for next fiscal year? Applied to next fiscal year?
It'll be applied to the buses that I think will be delivered and paid for sometime in the summer, whether it's this fiscal year or, you're talking could be June, could be July. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's the money was coming out of this current fiscal year.
Okay. And the athletics fund, the $19K for the athletics, where is that revenue coming from?
So that could be a mixture, because there's a lot of different 300 funds. Some of them are athletics, some of them are student activities. So there's probably a multitude of changes in there. The funding is going to either be in athletics because of ticket sales, or it's going to be in a student activity because of, for instance, a fundraiser or student fees. There's no tax dollars in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. I would now accept a motion to approve the superintendent HR and volunteer items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ferguson,
Second.
second by Mr. Keck. Comments, Diane?
Well, you can see we have a laundry list of HR action in that. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have over those contract renewals for the upcoming year as well. Lots of resignations and retirements. I don't know if you have any questions over that, and certainly a long list of volunteers as well.
Any questions, comments?
Are the volunteers for this year or next year?
It's close to field day, is my suspicion with that laundry list.
Well, I'd just like to say thanks to the volunteers, because we need them.
We keep a steady line pretty much all year, but certainly you'll notice in April and May, we're gearing up to field day. It takes a lot of parents and grandparents to pull that off.
And we do. We certainly appreciate them. You're right.
Just for the SAC summer program, I know there's a lot of staff. The SAC is independently funded through user fees. So if you enroll, the district's not covering any of those salaries. It's based off of user fees, correct?
Correct.
All right,
SAC and food service are self-sustaining funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, all right, roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. I would now accept a motion to approve the other superintendent action items.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Comments?
Certainly another busy area of the agenda, but most exciting, our list of graduates for Saturday. So excited to get those approved, and that's always, this might be the most accurate list we've ever had because practice was today, and I know some names were switching around. So we should be in pretty good shape there. You'll also have handbooks and fees for next year. Cypress Church lease is going well. That's on there as well. I was going to hit fees a little bit. Elementary, Creekview, early college, in the high school, there are no increases in fees going into next year. They're flat, or no changes, I would say. They're flat. There were some changes. Bunzold 7th grade is an increase of $1. The 8th grade is a decrease of $6. Advanced ELA is an increase of $4, and mostly that's due to books that they're purchasing that are consumable, that the prices have gone up. Principles of food has increased by $1 due to food prices. So our teacher goes out and buys things at the grocery store for them to prepare in class. And in Spanish, it's a decrease of $3. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we're headed into as well for next year.
Questions and comments?
For the student handbooks, can you, what's the process of reviewing and revising, and what all parties are kind of involved in that?
So there are some changes that have to be made by law sometimes. So Jonathan spearheads those with principals. Principals work with their staffs to update those pieces. We go through a review process as well before they come on the agenda as to all of you.
Did want to comment. I mean, I appreciate that a lot of these updates, the purpose behind them was to provide consistency and clarity across the district. So I just appreciated that. So as a parent, as you have kids moving to different buildings, or you have kids in different buildings, it's nice to have that terminology agree at every level. So thank you for doing that. Any other questions or comments? Oh, okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carries. And finally, we are to comments and questions from board members. I'm going to start to my right tonight. Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, I just want to, first I want to speak about Tri-Academy, and I appreciate all the speakers that came out tonight. I understand that we have a contingency, and we have this photo here, and it says 2017 and 2023. But I know that end date is not going to be 2023 because I trust the community will support our students. I fully value everything that Tri-Academy does and has done, and I value every student who walks in there, and I've seen the eyes light up of the teachers, the staff, and the students when we visit. And I know that Tri-Academy is not something, it's not extra, it's not fluff, it's essential. And so I'm committed to making sure that, you know, the community knows how valuable they are, and 2023 is not going to be the end date. It's just a temporary pause until the community supports us at the level we need to. I also want to thank every staff member, administrator who helped to facilitate the building visits. Again, building visits are very helpful for me to have the context that we need to make decisions. You know, I mentioned the camera thing earlier, and that was from talking to an SRO. One of the things I liked this year is talking every building at the elementary levels, we were able to engage with the SROs and hear from them their experiences and their professionalism and their passion for serving our students. And so I very much are thankful to everyone who was engaged, and all the kids were excited to talk about what they're learning. And so it was very nice to see. May is Foster Care Awareness Month, and you know, part of why I wanted to join this board was not because, yes, because we're growing, yes, because, you know, we have to deal with issues and I have kids, but my own personal journey was very much, I was a foster kid. I started off high school being credit deficient because I was homeschooled, quote unquote, homeschooled, and in a very traumatic home. But it was the teachers, even Miss Watts here tonight was one of my teachers. It was the teachers, it was the coaches who were very instrumental in my personal education. It was my foster parents who were advocates at our IEP meetings early on and getting me caught back up. I know, Mr. Smith, I did poorly in your AP government class. I did not go to FFA, but you know, I was able to have a learning experience. I remember New Albany wrestling JV match. I penned my first match. That was the time I figured out you can win, you can be somebody. Even though JV match, you know, was not a varsity wrestler, I ended up having the opportunity to be a varsity track and cross country runner, captain. Mr. Cooper was our coach at the time. And I wasn't always the perfect student, I got in trouble a lot, but I had space in this district to get in trouble, to be redirected, to be guided. And I didn't have a cord on graduation day, but I had a plan. I went to Tiffin University, ran track for them for a semester, and then ended up going to the Marine Corps. But without the staff that were in this, you know, Mr. Cooper, Ms. Kukas, Mr. Smith, other staff members that are still here in the district, without their dedication, without their support, without their redirection, saying you can do it, I wouldn't be here right now. And part of my experience in foster care, I met other foster students who may very well have been part of Tri Academy if Tri Academy was around. I'm not saying that, that's very real. But it's the actions that our teachers have, the hope, the inspiration that we as a district give to those students who may not be in the best situations at home. The opportunities that we provide through education can put someone else in my seat who may be in foster care today. So I just want to thank this district for the work that you're doing. Thank you for this community. And if you want to be a foster parent, you want to be, please sign up because there's a kid that's waiting for some help and love and care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Ms. Savage.
I wanted to thank Jennifer Hinder and from Early College High School for a presentation today. I also wanted to highlight a couple things that we saw on our building tours. Number one was the career day visits. Several of the elementary, if not all of the elementary schools were doing career days in the last couple weeks of school here. So interesting to see the little people and sometimes the big people that they made and all the parents that were coming in to support career day in the schools. Also, at Raymond Elementary, we saw a city building project, Armstrong Utopia, and Schroyersville. It was an amazing project, and it's one of those projects that you can do at the end of the year because it takes a lot of time. But the students, third grade, I think, they built their own cities. They had a certain number of index cards that they could use to build a house. They decided what kind of businesses they wanted in their cities. They decided on traffic laws and criminal laws. They had someone from the sheriff's office come in and talk about law enforcement, and you know, they had 3 laws written down, and he brings in a book. It's probably 12 inches thick, and goes, these are the laws that we enforce here in this county. And they're like, wow. But it was an excellent, excellent project. And those kids were so engaged. It was amazing.
Thank you. Mr. Keck.
Yes, I wanted to thank Jennifer. She's not here now, but for that presentation tonight, that was awesome. A lot of good things going on at all the schools, as Mr. Smith said. It is truly, I don't know, enlightening to go to the schools and see how good it is. We ended our tour, I think, at the Tri Academy, which is kind of sad at that time. And I agree with Jermaine that that program is extremely effective for some people that wouldn't be served otherwise. And I hope that we can find some way to bring that back, and I hope the community doesn't allow that to go. You know, and on that note, I had another question. I know we don't normally end with questions, but this is for Todd. It was said that 66% of the new levy would have been go to TIFs, but I think it's 66% of the TIF areas would get that reduction.
Sorry if I worded that wrong.
You didn't.
Okay.
I'm not.
So 66% of the new money generated in a residential TIF area,
Okay.
instead of that money going to the school, it would go to the city.
I see. And so that's one of the reasons we've got to make the cuts that we've got to make, unfortunately. And then you said something else, 4 million this year?
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Keck. Mr. Smith.
A couple of things. At Bunsold, there were a group of students that decided to try to raise awareness in the building for cancer. And my grandson happened to participate as a member of that group. And they went out to the track, and they went around the track various times and so forth. And he came home tired, covered with eye black all over. He was deeply engaged in that. And my wife asked him a couple of questions about cancer and so forth. And he was able to answer every question that she asked. So I know that was a good day and a great project, and it was nice to know that it was the students that generated that idea. I was going to mention the cities up at Raymond being built. One thing that I thought was really interesting was that each classroom had to make a wish list for their city and then give it to the other classroom. And the other classroom had to approve their wishes. And I know one room had 12 wishes and only got 8 approved. So a little real life lesson in that. We spent some time talking about the levy and some of the issues. Todd made a wonderful presentation for us tonight. And I mentioned this the last time we met, that our goal as a board ought to be to build a better community. And that the work that we do to try to achieve that goal is to provide education for the students in this community and make them good citizens. And I hope people don't lose sight of that. I hope other bodies and other boards will take a moment and just reflect what is their ultimate goal. And I think in working with the 4 of you and with our administrators, I get the sense that build a better community is really what we're striving to do. And as I said, our work is the educational piece. And kind of tied into that, I had a great experience today. I met a woman who lives in Marysville now, but a year ago, she lived in Kentucky with her husband. They had their own business, a daughter that was in school. It was a small school. They had tried private schools, homeschooling. Daughter wanted to go to a public school, so they had her in a public school. The mother went and got a part-time job in the public school, and between her and her daughter's experiences there, they knew that things weren't right. Well, somehow or some way, someone mentioned to her, you need to look at Marysville. And so they drove up, and I think it may have been the last day of school, the next to last day of school. They went to the high school building, and walked in and asked if they could look around. And somebody took them on a 2.5-hour tour of our school. And at the end of that tour, she went back to Kentucky. They sold their business, sold their house, sold everything else that they needed to get rid of, and moved to Marysville solely because of the school system and the opportunity that they saw for their daughter. She's currently a freshman and thrilled to be here. And the mother told me that she was concerned because coming from a very small school, going to a big high school, would her daughter get lost? And she said, all my fears disappeared. The teaching staff just embraced her. She pointed out that within 2 weeks, her math teacher recommended that she be moved to a higher level math class because she met all the requirements for the course that she was currently enrolled in. And she said, how do they know that? How do they get to know someone that well in 2 weeks? And I said, well, that's just what we do. So I'm proud of our school district. I'm proud of what we accomplish. And I think that's a good story to end on.
And that makes me think of Board Leadership Institute and Jim Mahoney, and actually the other presenter too, just talking about the importance of stories, you know, that people will remember the stories and what that meant. So thank you for sharing that. Todd, any comments?
Yeah, I would just quickly, note we recently had that booster meeting with, some of the heads of booster programs and a lot of coaches and advisors. And I guess I would just compliment most of the people there. I was going into that meeting fully prepared for just things to go off the rails, and because these people are, they're the things that they're passionate about have been impacted. But I was really pleased with the tone of the meeting. It's not like people were happy to be there, but they were there, solution-based, not pointing fingers, not complaining because this wasn't fair to one group versus the other. So I just thought it was worth pointing out, the quality group that was.
Thanks for letting us know that. Diane.
I think just a couple of things. First of all, Nan, so excited to think about a student serving on the board. That's been a passion of mine for some time. So would love to partner on thinking about that in the future. Also, Mr. Keck and Todd and I have a meeting with the city. So next week to engage in conversation around many of the topics. I know we did vote to kind of put on notice to remove ourselves from the EDIP. So in part, that's follow up to that. So we will, be prepared to work together and assume positive intentions when we come together to seek solutions from the school district, for sure.
Great, thank you. I also want to thank Ms. Hinder and her staff. The statistics were impressive, but I think what gets me is just behind all those statistics, that means that students are more engaged and confident. So it's a great recipe for growth and success. Also wanted to mention, since our last meeting, the high school put on Mary Poppins, the musical. I don't know if anybody had a chance to go to that, but it had 5th graders through 12th graders, and it was unbelievable. You had Mary Poppins flying through the air, Bert going upside down on the stage, and so many students involved. So that was great. Talked about the Career Day signing, Bunsold Relay for Life. Then I think about all of our extracurriculars between track. We've had records broken, softball, 5-time OCC champs, personal bests out there, students attending the National Japan Bowl, FFA, choir programs, National Honor Society, band programs, Edgewood Extravaganza. I mean, there's so many wonderful events and opportunities for our students and our community. Also, wanted to point out it's National Police Week, and wanted to thank Ms. Allen. Actually, she sent a thank you to our police officers and copied Mr. Emery on that. What a great partnership that is. It's a benefit for everybody. And like you said, when you go into the buildings, I had a chance to talk to several of the SROs and several of the new ones. And you know, some that just started a few months ago, and the impact it's had on them already is really amazing. So that's great. Finally, with our contingency plan, you know, we don't take lightly the impact of the contingency plan. So, sorry, I just think about Tri-Academy. But anyways, I just want everybody to know we are committed to doing whatever we can to provide support for our staff. We know that they're going to do the best they can do. They always go above and beyond for our students. So with that, I just want to thank everybody, and I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage and second by Mr. Smith. Roll call.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Peck?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:46. Thank you.